guys, Puggers here, and welcome to Kyle is Famous.
Kyle woke up. He is famous. Kyle is host of the most popular talk show in recent memory, Stay Up Late with Kyle.
Well, that's cool.
Stay Up Late with Kyle has grown in popularity quickly in the last year, and the public has noticed. Inside has called Kyle a most excellent dumpy white man. Top Tech noted that Kyle is inspiring youth to explore STEM fields. Most other talk shows are dedicated to discussing Kyle and his personal details.
It seems like he is known worldwide.
Most online videos are best of clips taken from Kyle's latest broadcast. The eye of the world is upon Kyle. Tonight is Kyle's most important guest interview yet. Stay Up Late with Kyle will be featuring Rachel May. She is a kind and lovely philanthropist. She is dear to the hearts of many. This interview requires preparation.
All right.
Kyle cracked his eyes open, knowing today is his last chance to prepare for the interview. Kyle has 30 hours left. He must choose his actions wisely.
Let's put on an outfit.
Kyle decided to take some time to choose the perfect outfit, knowing how important appearance is.
All right, let's go with swimming gear too. Our interview.
Kyle decided on a fashion-forward, casual style. He could barely see out of the goggles.
Awesome.
Kyle quickly crouched down on the floor, realizing his immediate need for... Kyle firmly pressed his ear into the carpet, hoping to hear some stray words from the neighbors below. I heard Rachel May is going on a trip out of the country soon. Oh, girlfriend, tell me more! Well, what I will tell you is that every night I don a mask that looks like a bug and fight misdoers.
That came out of nowhere.
There was a stunned silence. Then a door opened, and someone exited the neighbor's apartment.
Maybe we can use that information for the interview later.
Kyle wrote down his first question.
Very interesting questions, I must say.
Kyle wrote down his second question.
Well, the raw egg one is quite interesting.
Kyle wrote down his third question.
Bro,
Kyle wrote down his last question. Kyle ripped his page of notes out of the notebook and got up from the desk.
well, it's time to eat.
Kyle opened the fridge,
I can
intending
eat
to
the
find
fridge.
something to eat. Kyle pointed his neck directly upwards and hoisted the fridge on top of his face.
That must be painful.
Somehow, miraculously, he wrapped his mouth around the device. He started to swallow. In one slow, horrible movement, the fridge slid down Kyle's throat.
How is that even possible?
After many gurgles, pops, and snaps, Kyle felt relatively sure the fridge would not come back out.
Interview time.
Kyle hurried to the set. Sitting across from his host chair was a glamorous woman with an air of genuinity. As Kyle approached her, Rachel looked up and smiled. "Good evening, Kyle," she said, looking him in the eyes. "I've been looking forward to being here." Kyle responded. Kyle stretched his arms wide, tilted his neck upwards, and was interrupted by his producer
Nah,
telling him and
I
Rachel that it
insist.
was time to start the show. Kyle shoved his producer out of the way, spread his arms wide, and began to scream loudly. He began to rotate slowly, screaming throughout, lightly brushing his hands against the faces of Rachel and his producer. After several minutes, Kyle was finished. He slowly put his hands to his sides and smiled.
Kyle is insane.
"I'm ready," said Kyle. Rachel blinked at Kyle, shrugged, and walked over to her seat. A moment after seating, the studio lights brightened and the cameras clicked on. "Good evening, everybody," said Kyle. "My neighbor is a bug vigilante."
Great job, Kyle.
With nothing more to say on the matter, he fell silent. Rachel, also on camera, stared at her hands and wondered when she was going to be introduced. The producer started cutting to different camera angles to break the tension. Kyle continued to remain silent and stare forward blankly. After several minutes, neighbor Gabby walked out onto set. "Hi, everyone," she said, smiling hollowly. "My name is Gabby, and I'm not a bug vigilante." False. Kyle looked at Gabby and then returned to staring forwards. Gabby began to reply, but was interrupted by a bug-shaped intercom on her belt. "Bug girl," it squawked. "A robbery's in progress on East 3rd. Report immediate." Gabby threw the intercom on the ground and crushed it under her foot. After a beat, she spoke tightly. "Something has come up suddenly and I must go." Gabby left the set. "Well," said Kyle, "that's all the time we have for tonight. Thanks for joining us, Rachel." Kyle got up, shook Rachel's hand again, and walked past the cameras, leaving her alone. Not knowing what else to do, the producer ended the broadcast. In the coming days, fans of both Rachel and Kyle dubbed this show as a masterpiece of television.
That's good.
Stay Up Late with Kyle's online pages were updated to reflect this broadcast as the most popular ever. Kyle's producer later tried to have Rachel on the show again, but she was very, very, very busy.
That was awesome. Let's try to get some more endings.
Kyle decided to stay put and wither away. Kyle withered successfully and died. Kyle is now a ghost. This does not relieve him of his responsibilities.
Oh man.
Kyle decided to take some time to choose the perfect outfit, knowing how important appearance is. Kyle chose the pasties made out of mashed skunk flesh.
Why does Kyle even have this?
Getting the slimy garments to stay proved difficult, so Kyle opted to stick them to his body with hot glue. Kyle wrote down his first question. Kyle wrote down his second question. Kyle wrote down his third question. Kyle wrote down his last question. Kyle ripped his page of notes out of the notebook and got up from the desk.
Maybe this
Kyle
key is
grabbed the
helpful.
small key he kept in his desk.
Let's go outside.
Kyle approached his downstairs neighbor's door and knocked. A middle-aged woman named Gabby answered the door. "Good morning, neighbor," said Kyle cheerfully. Gabby looked at Kyle expectantly. "Gabby," Kyle asked, "what are your true thoughts about Rachel May?" "Oh, Rachel?" Gabby said. "She's a wonderful woman. Her generous acts have inspired more good work than bad." Gabby trailed off, not meeting Kyle's eyes. After several uncomfortable minutes of silence, Kyle turned around and left.
That was awkward.
Kyle hurried to the set. Per normal, he ceased to be a ghost before he arrived.
Oh, it's just normal for him to be a ghost then. Stop being one.
Sitting across from his host chair was a glamorous woman with an air of genuinity. As Kyle approached her, Rachel looked up and smiled. "Good evening, Kyle," she said, looking him in the eyes. "I've been looking forward to being here." Kyle responded. "And I as well, Rachel," answered Kyle, extending his hand in greeting. "You are a most welcome guest." After other mild exchanges of pleasantries, Kyle and Rachel were prompted to take their places for the broadcast. A moment after seating, the studio lights brightened and the cameras clicked on.
All right, let's get this started.
"Good evening, everyone," said Kyle, looking at the camera. "Welcome back to Stay Up Late with Kyle. Tonight, I have the pleasure of interviewing the lovely Rachel May, who needs no more introduction." Kyle motioned to Rachel, who smiled and waved at the camera. "Hello, Kyle," she said. "I'm glad to be here." In response, Kyle collapsed on the floor.
Huh.
From a combination of stressful preparation and not eating anything,
Ooh.
Kyle had passed out. Nobody in the studio quite knew what to do with him. They began to poke Kyle in the back to see if he moved. After a while, they ended the broadcast, shut off the lights, and went home. Kyle was left face first on the floor.
I gotta remember to do that next time.
Kyle quickly crouched down on the floor, realizing his immediate need for... Kyle started to pick between the fuzz of his bedroom carpet, hoping to catch a stray beetle or two. Soon, he had a small handful of various insects, dead and alive. Kyle threw back his head and crammed the sticky, wriggling mass into his mouth.
You.
He felt refreshed. Kyle wrote down his first question. Kyle wrote down his second question. Kyle wrote down his third question. Kyle ripped his page of notes out of the notebook and got up from the desk.
Oh, I can't forget an outfit.
Kyle decided to take some time to choose the perfect outfit, knowing how important appearance is. Kyle was unsure of what exactly caused him to decide to wear his armor, but it felt like the right thing to do. After much squeezing and sweating, Kyle managed to wrap the metal suit around his dumpy self.
Maybe I can get Techno Jim.
Quickly, before the attendant could acknowledge him, Kyle grabbed Techno Jim by the shoulders. Finding that Techno Jim's cardboard feet were bolted to the ground, Kyle started to heave upwards. After several tugs, Techno Jim broke free, leaving one foot and one leg behind. Kyle glanced at the attendant, who was staring, bewildered, and ran outside.
We just stole something.
Kyle approached his downstairs neighbor's door and knocked. A middle-aged woman named Gabby answered the door. "Good morning, neighbor," said Kyle cheerfully. Gabby looked at Kyle expectantly. "Gabby," Kyle asked, "what are your true thoughts about Rachel May?"
"Oh, Rachel?" Gabby said. "She's a wonderful woman."
Okay, let's skip to the interview.
Kyle hurried to the set. Sitting across from his host chair was a glamorous woman with an air of genuinity. As Kyle approached her, Rachel looked up and smiled.
"Good evening, Kyle," she said, looking him in the eyes. "I've been looking forward to being here."
Kyle roughly shoved Rachel out of her seat and placed Techno Jim in her stead. "Hello, Techno Jim," said Kyle. "I'm going to interview you today."
Yay!
Kyle grasped Techno Jim's hand and tried to shake it, but instead tore it off the cardboard frame. Kyle's producer, sensing viral media, pulled the bewildered Rachel out of frame and motioned the crew to go live. Cameramen moved, lights flashed, and suddenly the studio was on air. "Hi, I'm Kyle," said Kyle, "and tonight I'm going to interview a very special guest." He pointed at Techno Jim using the dismembered arm. Techno Jim started to smoke from the heat of the lights.
That can't be good.
"Would you like to introduce yourself?" asked Kyle. Knowing Jim would probably not speak, Kyle took it upon himself to be his voice as well.
"Hi, Kyle," he said, raising the pitch of his voice. "My name is Rachel May, and I'm a very special guest."
Rachel's expression of confusion turned to shock. "Well, Rachel, you look way too thin and absolutely terrible, and you should
Seems like
feel
Kyle
ugly."
has some
Kyle
beef with
gave Jim a
Rachel.
meaningful stare.
"Wow, Kyle," he said. "I sure wish I could look like you."
Techno Jim burst into flames.
Wow!
Instantaneously, the sprinkler system initiated. Curtains of water poured down from the rafters. Within seconds, the production equipment was doused in water. The set was soon aburst with electrical fires. Kyle's crew abandoned their posts as cameramen and sound mixers to try to put the fires out. As the crew scrambled around, the cameras continued to run. Kyle sat, motionless, staring forward. Eventually, the fires were all put out. Kyle's producer shut off the broadcast, leaving Kyle's vacant stare as the final frame. Kyle's rating skyrocketed.
That's amazing.
Techno Jim became a staple on the show, often ending up destroyed by the end of each episode. Although Rachel did not come back on the show, her cardboard portrayal did. Rachel was very popular.
Anyways, that's the end of today's episode. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Vai, toma, toma, vai, toma, toma, vai.